We've had somewhat of a Labour turnaround in recent days. You may have seen that Shabana Mahmood, who is the Secretary of State for the Home Department, has recently been a little bit more aggressive on the whole immigration crackdown thing. Firstly, this is really interesting, isn't it? Given that Labour are the party of pro-immigration, I would say, and a lot of the issues that we are now experiencing here in the UK can be actually traced back to them, also to the Conservative Party. Actually, it all kind of got really bad from Blair onwards. Wouldn't it actually be nice to return to BB before Blair? Anyway, it's interesting because Labour has been driving one narrative for a long time. And then we've started to see the demise and the antitrust, if you will, of the Labour Party really begin to set in. Now, we've seen a lot of things from Rachel Reeves on the budget. You'll know what I mean there. And then they brought in Mahmood in September 2025, so not long ago at all. They needed some fresh meat. They needed someone else, a new face, to come in and say some opposing views, some different things to what they normally would say. It would have been way more problematic if they had just allowed Keir Starmer to actually say this all directly straight away, because then the public would more easily see that it's actually a little bit of a lie and something is going on here that's not so great. This way, by having Mahmood come in, it's from someone else, someone who hasn't previously said the opposite a million times before. So it's easier for Labour to think that they've actually managed to fool the general public by doing it this way. However, the public aren't fooled. We are seeing Labour's demise play out right in front of us, in front of our very eyes. Labour are having big issues with their finances. They are, they're seriously causing economic problems for us. We used to be a country of economic desire, on top of the world, if you will. But now we have more millionaires and high earners than ever before that add a lot to the UK economy fleeing. We have anti-business policies. You can't buy houses very easily. GDP per capita is falling. The list goes on and on and on. So they've got to the point now where they don't have a choice. They have to do something. And raising taxes, which is one method, isn't really a popular strategy anymore with the average hard-working Brit. So, two things are now playing out in my opinion. Number one, they've been forced to confront what's really costing the country money. And number two, they are very much seeing that the UK have had enough of being lied to and being forced to accept mass immigration while footing the bill. So say hello to Mahmood's new way to tackle immigration and actually cut the money spent. Now, I say good. I'm not particularly married to a certain party. I am more married to the morals and what particular party is doing what I think is needed and the right thing. However, I must say that it's not too reassuring to see her say that they're going to, strip assets when they come across the channel, including jewellery, to help pay for the housing that these migrants need. She says that one day, and then the next day she says, oh, you know what, we won't do that. And also, I will say that the policies do feel very lukewarm. It feels like they are saying what is just enough to sort of keep the population pleased and at bay. Not sure that this will happen, honestly. And I also wonder how many people trust that the Labour Party are the party to actually follow this through. Again, not many, I can't imagine anyway. It seems more like a last-minute attempt to actually get some more votes and keep them in power. They're seeing it turn around in their eyes. They're thinking, what can we do? Quick. It is going to be a really interesting general election next time round, I think. The UK political scene is turning. It's going from a two-party fight, Labour v Conservatives, traditional right versus traditional left. Though we could argue if this is even accurate anymore. If the Conservative Party is actually more central nowadays rather than being the right-wing party or the more right-wing party. But anyway, it seems nowadays it's more like tactical voting towards the Greens, which, by the way, if you are a Green voter or you plan to vote for the Greens, please know that these guys aren't that interested in the environment anymore. Just look into what you're actually voting for if you're planning on doing that. And the Liberal Democrats versus Reform, I would say. Labour and Conservatives seem to be just going downhill and losing votes, so people are going elsewhere. Basically, anyone that doesn't want to vote for Reform is tactically voting in order to keep Reform out rather than voting for the party they really like. That's what it seems like anyway. Nigel and Zia, who are the leader of Reform and the head of policy at Reform, gave a speech this morning to go through how £25 billion could be saved without actually raising taxes. And I want to show you what they are wanting to do, because they seem a little bit more thought out, these ideas, than just taking jewellery off migrants to pay for their housing one day and then the next day deciding not to do that. Which, by the way, it seems to have only been a broken plan due to the in-house party anger. You know, the other Labour MPs weren't happy about this, nor were the hardcore Labour voters. They're kind of annoyed that they're now seeing their own party sounding more and more like reform as time goes on. Interesting. We've actually published an entire breakdown on what was said in this speech over on our Substack. So, feel free to go over there and check that out if you want to. It's free to do. But I'm going to use that because I want to show you exactly what they said. Okay, so here we are. You can obviously go and check this out like I just said. But his pitch is very, very simple. Before you raise taxes on working families, stop sending billions abroad and stop funding welfare for people who aren't British citizens. Take care of the British person first. It's as simple as that. And he's laid down the numbers behind the claim. Farage and Reform UK say that there's around £25 billion that could be found this year by making a series of choices that Westminster has been avoiding for decades. A reordering of priorities, if you will. We know that with the Labour Party, and even prior to the Labour Party, the priorities really haven't been just the average hard-working British person. And I can't speak for everyone, but I've definitely felt that myself in terms of buying a home, taxes, all of these things. Just things they're everyday things, it's super simple. So their argument starts with welfare. Right now, billions in universal credit go to foreign nationals. Reform says, simple, let's just stop that. That will save loads. Then there's the NHS surcharge that legal migrants pay, which at the moment is about £1,035 a year. Now, the interesting thing with this is, number one, this is what legal migrants pay. So the ones that we know about, which actually is the bigger problem than illegal immigrants, because the government has been allowing them in. So a lot of them are just legal at this point. So it's not really illegal ones that are the problem. It's just mass immigration as a whole, legal being a big bit of that. They pay about £1,035 for the NHS right now. The problem with this is that this is about a third of what it actually costs, a third of what the average person costs to treat. So if the legal migrants are paying 1/3, where are the other 2/3 coming from? Reform says raise it to the real figure and apply it consistently, including to people applying for permanent residency. Next, we've got the disability benefits. They argue that PIP should be reserved for people with serious life-impacting conditions, not mild mental health cases, and that the system has drifted far from its original purpose. Whether you agree or disagree with this, that would be a large part of where the savings numbers come from. Now, again, I don't know about you, but it's very, very clear that there isn't an incentive to actually work hard anymore in the UK. A lot of people are still working hard based on morals and feeding families and whatnot, and it's the right thing to do. But there are many, many people who can clearly see, and you can't really knock their intelligence for seeing this because it's obvious. But it makes more sense for a lot of people economically to just sign on and not work than it does to actually get up at 6 a.m, work a 12-hour shift, come home and repeat it for 5, 6, even 7 days a week sometimes. So there really needs to be the removal of the incentive not to work in order to actually make people feel like they should work. Again, talking about migration, there needs to be a removal of the incentives to come over to the UK. Otherwise, people will keep doing that. People aren't stupid. They're going to go where they're going to get a better way of life and better money and easy money. So a lot needs to change. Anyway, let's move on. There's also foreign aid. Reform wants to go from roughly 10 to 11 billion a year down to 1 billion a year. Right now, a lot of money is going to foreign aid. So it's not staying at home, it's going elsewhere. There's always going to be some level of foreign aid, I'm sure, and money being spent abroad. It's always happened, it's always going to happen, but it's really, really high right now. So here they say cut it to 1 billion a year, enough to fund disaster relief. There's certain things that we should, as a Western, wealthy country, we should probably help, but there's other things that we probably shouldn't, and we're probably not spending money very well on. So support Ukraine and meet UN obligations, but not much else. That's what they would do. They used examples like the Road to Nowhere or multi-million-pound family planning projects in Pakistan to make their case. By the way, just on a tangent here, did you know that I think the majority of the asylum seekers coming to the UK are from Pakistan? Now, to be an asylum seeker, to be a refugee, by definition, you have to be fleeing a dangerous place. You have to be coming somewhere to get away from a potential, attack on your livelihood, if you will. You need to be fleeing from something. There's no real danger, as far as I'm aware, in Pakistan. Yes, it wouldn't be my first choice to live there. I'd much rather live in the UK. But what are you actually fleeing from if your homeland is okay, but you'd prefer to live here? If we had that policy and we allow anyone that just fancies living here... Anyway, off on a tangent, I'm back to this. And finally, foreign national offenders. Around 12% of the British population is made up of people who aren't British citizens. So Farage says send them home to serve their sentences instead of paying to house them here. My opinion would be very simple as well. Make them serve their prison sentence where they're from, rather than the taxpayers footing the bill to have a criminal housed in prison in the UK. That doesn't make sense. Why are we paying for a dangerous criminal? I know that you could argue, well, if that's the logic, then why are we paying for our own criminals? But every country has the responsibility to obviously house their own criminals. And all of that together, they would get to the full £25 billion. The bigger point they're making, though, is the British state should serve the British citizen first, not last, not after every overseas obligation is met, not after every exception and exemption is paid for. This is the thing that a lot of people are missing. This isn't radical. This isn't really right-wing stuff. This is just common sense. There are many countries around the world that put their citizens first. Think of Vietnam, just one example. They would put the Vietnamese person before spending money on everyone else. That is how a country does well. And if every country did that, they'd all be all right. I'm obviously oversimplifying it, but you kind of get the idea, I hope. Now, whether Labour would implement any of this is another matter entirely. We don't know if they would. There's definitely a lack of trust in them right now. Some of these proposals would be legally complex, diplomatically awkward, or politically explosive, no doubt about it. They'd probably lose a lot of followers if they actually follow through with this, because like I said before, a lot of the Labour followers are going to think that this is very reform-like to be doing stuff like this. But they, the fact that they've been speaking out against some of these issues and actually sort of turning tables on what they've been saying for a long time has actually got them a little bit of a high five from some people that really typically do not like the Labour Party. So I think this just comes down to a common sense thing rather than a which party thing. But the timing is interesting. Reeves is under pressure, like I was saying. She's ruled out big headline tax rises. And people are tired of seeing the same old pattern. Taxes go up, services get worse, and nobody seems to ask the harder questions about where that money is actually flowing. So Reform has placed their alternative on the table, one that doesn't rely on tax rises at all, which I think we'd all be glad to see. Now, whether you agree with it or you think it's unworkable, it's likely to shape the conversation right up to budget day, which is going to be very interesting, and we'll definitely be covering what was said during that day. We won't have to wait too long to see which way Rachel decides to go. But yeah, that was all I wanted to share on this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, maybe follow this channel and go and have a look at our Substack. I think we're trying to grow it obviously right now, and we post a free weekly newsletter on everything that's happened from an anti-woke perspective each week on a Saturday. So again, if you want to sign up for that, feel free. But anyway, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.